Hey, welcome back to Claw. This is the next part that we're looking at for creating this bomber jacket today. So the jacket itself is going to look something like this guy. This was the references I was talking about before. This is what we're going for. These are some references that we're going to work from. Um, I'm just going to quickly look back at this base pattern that we've created and look at this in terms of some balance. So what I mean by that is these lines that we're creating here as we're constructing the pattern. This line here goes straight from the shoulder to the cuff, and it's going quite straight, so we know that this sleeve isn't really twisted. It's not pulling in a direction, it's traveling straight to the wrist, so this is fine. I'm going to use the internal rectangle polygon tool here, press G to activate that as a shortcut, and I'm going to draw from the underarm, press Shift and draw a right angle straight to the back, a line, and the same on the front, okay? And what that'll do now is give us like a point around this whole pattern piece, around this whole pattern to show us if this is hanging as it should do. So if I press 4, 6, 4 and 6 is the number pad on the keyboard. I can see this from like the left side and the right side. If I press 2, it's from the front, and if I press 8, it's from the back. So with 8, we see that this is going straight from left to right. There's no problems. With 2, we see this from the front. It's kind of rising up a bit. And with 4 and 6, we see that this is not straight. It's kind of coming through an angle. So what we want to do, the front is fine. The back is fine because this point looks okay. But if you come across, we want the front to land at the same point, and right now it's a little bit higher up, and this line is pulling up. We see that that's happening here. Even though on this pattern, the back is actually shorter than the front because we've had this drop in the front. It's still not compensating for this, and that's because the issue is above the armhole here. It's not at this point underneath. So to fix that, we need to spread this pattern open a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to use this tool here on the left side called fullness. And it's the third one down on the right side of the screen. Basically, this will allow us to open up the pattern and add more space into this. So if I click in the armhole and go straight across to the front, click, and then choose the top section and just open this up maybe 8 millimeters here. I think to get to this point in the front here, we need about 1.5 centimeters. So I've done 8 there, and I can choose another point here, come back to the front again, straight across, and do another 8 millimeters there. Again, I can see that this is 8 millimeters by this purple number that's being affected here. And I'm just going to click and let those drop that back down. So I have this, now my front edge is curved, which is okay for now. And I've added that distance in through the front. So if I simulate now, my front, and I kind of grab this down, my front should drop down. I want to pull this down so it sits in a good place, but you see now if I press 4 and 6, that this line is a lot more horizontal. It's not coming at an angle, it's coming straight down, and we see the front is also straight. Like this is level on the front and the back now. So we know that this pattern is balanced, we would say. It's not pulling up in any direction. The next thing I want to look at is quickly the sleeve, because this is quite a large sleeve and this shoulder is quite dropped down. So we might want to make this whole pattern just a bit bigger so that it sits against the body in this way. Right now this is a bit narrow and the shoulder is in quite a normal position, let's say, whereas this drops off the shoulder here and it drops off the shoulder here. It's a bit oversized. So we can do that now. I'm quite simply going to select all the pattern pieces and just drag them to be a little bit bigger. Not much, just a little tiny bit. And then I'm going to resimulate. This is going to proportionately add into the whole thing, which is okay to do sometimes, but we don't want to do that too much because this neck hole is going to get huge, which is not going to be accurate to what we want to produce. So what we can do next is add a little bit of width in to still get this shoulder to drop down a bit more. And then we're going to add some volume into the sleeve. So again, for the sleeve, we're going to do the same. Actually, no, we're just going to move the seams. We're going to do the same to the front as we do to the back. So I'm going to choose this line here, and I'm going to press the left key on the number pad to move it 1 centimeter to the left. Choose this one and press right to move it 1 to the right. And do the same for these. So 1 left and 1 right. And now I've added in 1 centimeter around all of these seams. So what I've done is quite balanced again in terms of making this adjustment. So if you adjust something, try to adjust all the seams. Don't just adjust it in one point, adjust it across the whole pattern pieces. Right now this curve, it's not looking great, so I can smoothen this off again with these curve pieces. This is coming out too far. This is bending inward. We can fix that here. And fix this bit here as well, I think. And re-simulate. So now we have a bit more width in our sleeve, and this is looking a lot kind of closer to what we want. I think I'm still going to just drop this armhole, this shoulder a little bit more. So on the back, I'm going to select just the shoulder point and press left once on the keyboard. And in the front, I'm going to select the whole side seam, so the armhole and the side seam, and press right once. So I've added into the whole width of the front, and in the back, I've just moved the shoulder seam. So now our shoulder should be 1 more centimeter kind of dropped. So now what I can do is if I choose the pattern piece and press Shift and Q on the keyboard, it will hide the piece. And I can see now where like my front armhole is sitting here. So if then I look at my reference, this looks kind of like a good point here. This point here and this point here looks quite accurate. So let's go with that. I'll press Control and A to select everything, and then Shift and Q to hide everything, and then Shift and Q again to bring everything back. So Shift and Q just hides our pieces. Now that we've got a nice base pattern to work with, we can start to add in the detailing, such as the pockets and the rest of the details that we want to work with. First thing we want to do is the waistband, the cuffs, and the collar. So if I look again here at this reference, we have a waistband here that's kind of elasticated, it has ribbing, so does the cuffs and so does the collar, so that we get something that's looking like this in the end, okay? The length of this jacket seems a tiny bit short for what we want, maybe, but I think for now I'm just going to leave it. At this point, I'm actually going to change the pose of my avatar because I think we've done enough in T pose, so I'm going to take it to A pose. So I'm going to go into my folders, go to avatars, objects, and choose my A pose avatar that I've exported. Drag this into your scene. I'm going to save this as pattern 02 so that I can always return to my previous versions, always save new versions so that you can go backwards. And then I'm going to turn from open to add avatar to morph target. The scaling is fine, and I'm going to set the frame count to 30. And what this means, it's going to morph this target over 30 frames to change the pose. So if I click OK now, my character drops his arms down. So I can simulate this again, and I see a little bit more accurately like how this is hanging around the arms. So I'm going to work the rest of this now in A pose, I think. The length looks fine. I think I'm going to make the sleeves a little bit longer, so I'm going to drag and select the ends of the sleeves and just drop this down 1 centimeter using the directional arrows on the keyboard. I'm going to do this twice to add 2 centimeters in length. And this is fine for now. So we're going to add first in the waistband. I think that is fine. Yeah, we're going to add first in the waistband, so I'll just get this to hang a bit nice. So now I've pulled it around. And to do that, we're going to go here, select the bottom edges of the pattern piece, right click and click offset as internal line. And this offset is going to be the width of our waistband, which for now I'm going to put as 6 or maybe 5 centimeters in depth, and click OK. So this is now the depth of our waistband, and if I right click and click cut and sew, we will now have automatically stitched these pieces together when we've kind of separated them. What I want to add next is a little seam in the front here. So I'm going to click this point, right click, offset as internal line, and I'm going to put 6 in here, and right click and click cut and sew. At this point, I'm going to take this fabric, click copy, rename it. I'll rename it rib actually, and the first one I'll call self, like the main fabric. With rib, I'm going to change the color to just a darker tone. Click apply, and then just drag and drop this rib fabric onto my rib pattern pieces, just so that visually I can see that this is a different cloth. Next, click your rib pieces and then drag them smaller, maybe about 2/3 of the size, drag them smaller, and then just resimulate. And that will give us now this kind of bunched up effect on the hem for as if it's rib. We're going to add more presets later, but now it's as if it's rib. And we can do the same on the cuff. So choose the edge, right click, offset as internal line. This is set to 6, which is fine. Right and click, cut and sew. And then before I make these smaller, I'm going to rotate them so that the top line is horizontal, and the same for this one. Just so that it's a little bit easier. When we resize them, we don't change their shape too much. So I'm going to resize these smaller again, and then just drag the rib fabric onto these. The same for these two on the other side, drag the rib fabric on and then simulate. And now we have a rib cuff happening as well. We could make this rib a little bit smaller still, I think, to just tighten it up. And there we go. So now the sleeves have a trim, and the front has the front and back has a waistband. The next thing we're going to do is add a neck trim onto this. And the first thing we'll select is this seam taping tool. So select seam taping and click the front and back of the neck, and it will give you this little orange line, and that will hold the neck measurement, hold the neck simulation in its correct measurement so that it's not kind of pulling into a different position, okay? This is quite far away from the neck, like when we look here. So I think I want to reduce from here in. I want to bring the neck point in. So if I press the Z key to choose the pattern edit tool, so here, I grab the inside neck point and just move it in about 1 centimeter. And I'm going to bring the center back up as well about 1 centimeter, and just smooth out this curve a bit so it's not too extreme. And do the same in the front as well. So I'm just going to bring this in the same amount. And I think I can actually bring the front down a tiny little bit because it looks quite high at this point here. So bring this down. And then hit spacebar again to resimulate this. If you want to get rid of these purple lines that we had from our fullness tool, you can right click and click delete all baselines, and those lines have now disappeared. I'm going to just straighten up the front of this jacket so that this is vertical and it's not coming at this angle. So first things I'll do is select these top 3 points and leave this bottom one in place. Select those points and press delete, and then choose the neck, the shoulder, and the armhole, and just drag these points and just slide them across until this point becomes vertical. And you see these pink lines have kind of snapped it into position where it's vertical. That should be good, I think. And then click this last point and press delete, and now we have one straight edge in the front. You can take this point, the underarm point here, and just make it straight again in the side seam, and just smooth off this curve if we need to. And then one more time, resimulate. So now our neck position is a lot nicer. It's still quite far away from the neck. I just drag this in and see how it goes. I think that's fine for now. We're going to build the neck trim now. So to do this, I'm going to press Shift and Z on the keyboard, and I can see now the front neck measurement and the back neck measurement. the easiest way to do this is going to be with the polygon tool. Actually, we're going to take the rectangle tool and we're going to click and we're going to say that the front should be 14.2 centimeters wide and the height at the back of the collar should be, let's say for now, 5 centimeters high. Okay, so I have 5 high by 14.2 round. And we'll do the same for the back. 9.75, which is the back neck length, and the height as 5. And now I'm going to put these pieces next to each other, and we can merge them together to create one collar trim piece. So if I choose this point here, right click and choose merge, we now have one pattern piece. It will get distorted in the 3D window, so if you right click in the 3D window and click reset 2D arrangement, it will correct that distortion. And what we want to do now is make this in a way that it can be unfolded. And you'll see what I mean by this in a second. So I'll just show you a reference of a bomber jacket collar. Actually, let's just go for this. So we'll take the internal polygon tool, choose the top corner, the top left corner, and drag a line to the bottom right corner. We'll press Z on the keyboard and click this point in the middle and just delete this. So we know the total net measurement of half of this neck, half here, this plus this, is 23.95 centimeters. So this plus this is 23.95. This line that I've drawn is now 24.47, so it's longer. And if I press C to curve this out, it's going to get longer still. So I'll curve this down, press Z to go back to pattern select and select the left side of this and just bring this line in until we get to 23.95 on the curve. So it just went under 23.86. This is fine. Okay. Click here, right click and click cut. It's 2. That error, okay, so let me explain the error. Cut. Internal lines must not overlap the pattern outline. What's happening here is this line is curved over and it's overlapping here. So if I just bring this back up a bit, straighten it off, right and click cut, this should have now separated into 2 pieces. So I have a top piece and an under piece. Delete this under piece, press C again, curve this down so you get a nice right angle here. And then select this, right and click and do symmetric pattern with sewing so that we can put these back to back. And now we have this kind of long curved shape, okay? We're going to stitch these 2 back pieces together, and this is going to be the center back part of our neck, okay? We'll do the neck sewing as well, so click the very center front here, come all the way to the shoulder, the center front here, and come all the way to the shoulder. Go to the notch tool, put a notch so we know where this connects to this sewing here. Back to the sewing machine, choose from the shoulder to the center back, and then go from the notch to the center back. This is now all stitched into the neck trim. So choose these 2 pattern pieces, spin them round, bring this back, and just line them up here. So I know that this is going to stitch in now because this is all going in the right direction. And let's simulate. So that has now given us the kind of collar shape of our bomber jacket. And this is now kind of on a fold. So this has been unfolded, but we've still kept this as 2 pattern pieces, so it's easier to edit. I'm going to not join these together yet, but they can be joined if we want. If you want to simulate this collar a bit better, we need to change the particle distance because right now we're in 20 everywhere. So if I press Control A, go to the right side and go down to particle distance, I have everything to 20. I'm going to drop this to 14 and I'm going to resimulate and I should get a nice smoother simulation here, right? Let's go to the fabric properties. So I'm going to choose rib, scroll down to the bottom, presets, I'm going to choose rib 2x2. For the self fabric, I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to choose wool and leave that as wool. So you see then this looks a lot stiffer, the simulation now compared to what we had before. This excess here is kind of bagging out in the front. We can delete. We we can remove. And to do that, we're just going to select these pieces, make everything a little bit taller and a little bit wider. And a little bit narrower, sorry, so that the back is higher and the front is smaller. And then we're going to go to the edit pattern, choose these two edges, go down to elastic, and in the ratio, enter 96 and change the strength to 5, and that will just contract this top edge a little bit and elasticate it. So if I simulate now, this sits really nice and close into the neck of our avatar, and it's stitched well into the front of the jacket as well. So here we are now, you know, we've got the cuffs and we've got the collar, and we're getting there with the details. So looking at this with the reference, this sketch that I've got here, I still think my size is a bit small. So again, the shoulder here is quite dropped. There's a lot of room in the sleeve and it feels a little bit longer, and so does the sleeve. Even here in this reference, it all feels a bit more spacious than what we've got in the garment here. So let's fix that first. I'm going to go to the center front of the jacket. I'm going to press Shift and Z to turn off the measurements and go to these two front lines here. I'm going to right click and click Offset as Pattern Outline. And this distance is set to 0.5. And what I'm doing is basically just adding 0.5 in to compensate for where the zip will be, so that we can create a zip detail as well. So that will also add a little bit of width in the front when I simulate. And then we can cut this away and turn it into some zips as we go through. The next thing I'm going to do again is add some width into the entire body, basically. So I'm going to select the side seam of the back, so the armhole and the side seam, and just press left on the keyboard once on this side, and do the same on the front pieces. So just select the armhole and the side seam and press left once again. So that will make our shoulder seam even longer and drop the shoulder down even more. For the length, we can choose the bottom edges of, and this tiny edge we've just created here for where the zip's going to be, and we can press down a couple of times here to simulate this as being a bit bigger as well. For the sleeve, I'm going to bring this out a little bit more, this inside point, just to add a bit more width, and just clean up the curvature here to add a bit more width under the arm. I think I could bring this out too. Add some more width in, and then simulate again. And yeah, we've added a nice amount of space into this jacket now, I think. The hem feels a little bit, the waistband feels a bit tight, so I'm going to choose these waistband pieces, this one and this one, and just select them a tiny bit bigger, and then simulate again. Maybe one more time, tiny bit bigger, just to loosen up this hem as well. Okay, so this jacket now is looking a lot more spacious in the body and in the shoulder. And I think we are good to go into the details now. So the first thing I want to add is a seam in the front. So if I go to my seam tool here, into my internal polygon and line tool here, or press G on the keyboard, I'm going to go from this point, I think about here, into the front, and then down to the side to just add in like a nice shape to the front of this jacket, a nice like graphic line. I'm just going to drag this point up a little bit, just this point. And then let's do something similar in the back. So from a similar point down to this kind of cross line. Actually, that's applied to the wrong piece. Let me try one more time. This point to about here, and then down to the back. So now I have like a nice seam shape at this point as well. I'm going to take this point here and connect it to this notch. So where my seam of the sleeve starts, my new back construction starts. Maybe raise this point a bit. Yep. And then in the front, I think it's fine here. Move it up a little bit, maybe. I'm going to use the same tool to actually, I'm going to go to internal rectangle, draw a nice pocket flap shape about 17 centimeters wide, about 4 centimeters high, like this. 5 centimeters high this is, and then I'm just going to twist the angle of it like this, and then I'm going to select these two corners and just drag them down to kind of pitch this angle of the pocket. Choose this bottom edge, right click and click split, and click uniform split, and that will split this line in half. And now I can take this point and just drag it down to make like a nice pointed edge on my pocket flap. Maybe raising these points up a little bit as well to just increase that angle. And now I have a nice pocket flap placed on the front of my jacket. To turn these lines, to cut here, I have some baselines now, and I want to turn those into these editable internal lines. So if you right click here and click unlock all baselines, choose this purple baseline, right click, convert to internal line, and this should now be a red editable internal line. Right click, extend / trim to pattern outline, and this will extend the pattern piece all the way to the end, the outline all the way to the end of the pattern piece, and do the same for these baselines on our little inserted piece here. So again, convert to internal line, choose these two internal lines now, right click and click cut and sew. Then we're going to go to add in the fabric property editor on the side, call this fabric zip, change the color to like a dark gray. We can turn the metalness all the way up and the roughness all the way down so it starts to shine like metal. And then just drag this into your zip pattern pieces. So anything that's going to be now represented as a zipper, just drag that in here. And now we should have this kind of shiny metal zip piece. So we're getting there with the details now. Next, let's add some top stitching in the armhole. So if we select all the segments, like the pieces for the armhole, right click, offset as internal line, and set this to 0.6. There's something weird going on right here. Let's try that again. Set as internal line, 0.6 centimeters. So this will be a 6mm top stitch that we can add later. And then the same for the shoulder. So I'm going to right click here and click offset as internal line, and then I have a 6mm top stitching on the shoulder seam as well. At this point we can start to add the secondary layer of detail, so the pocket flaps and anything that's going to sit on top of this jacket. So for now I'm going to save as a new project, call it pattern 3. Save it at this point, and now we can go back in and start to create some secondary details. First things first, select the front pattern pieces, right and click layer clone over. Okay, so that's your layer clone over. Press shift to kind of lock that into this axis, like into this drag, and then just drop it underneath. Choose your pocket edges, right click on these internal lines and click cut, and then choose the panels, like the body panels that have now had the pockets cut away from them, and just press delete. And what we've got now is two pocket flaps kind of sat perfectly on top of the fabric where they were simulated before. What we're going to do now is choose these, right click and click apply linked editing, symmetric pattern with sewing. So these are going to be linked now. If we edit one, the other will be edited as well. So if I delete this line off this one, it will delete off this one. I'm going to select the top edges of these pockets, right click and click offset as internal line for both the pattern piece and the pocket flap as well. turn off extend, because you see here this new line has been extended all the way to the edges. We can turn off extend and just duplicate the line as it is underneath and press OK. And then we're going to stitch this together. So the best way to do this, actually I'm going to do this in a different way. Choose those lines again, right click, click offset as internal line, choose extend, and then click to internal line. And this will now extend directly to the edges of these internal lines, and then it will stop extending. So now we have a line that goes all the way to the edge of the pattern piece, rather than it stopping anywhere. To stitch this now, choose the sewing machine, choose the top edge, stitch that to the top edge here, choose this secondary piece, which would be the top stitch, and then stitch that here as well. And then press simulate, and we should now have two pocket flaps kind of like stitched on top of our jacket. We do want to add some edge stitching to this jacket, the flap as well, so choose all these external edges, right click, offset as internal line, and leave it set to 0.6 as our kind of standard measurement for our pocket flaps, and then press simulate again, and we have the two pocket flaps. If I look back at this sketch, we have like one pocket placed on the front, and then we have some gathering up the sleeves, so now we can make these adjustments for the sleeves and to add this pocket in the front. For the front pocket, we're going to do the same thing. Internal rectangle tool, draw our pocket shape on the pattern piece about here. Choose just the one side this time, right click, layer clone over, drop the piece underneath, zoom in. I'm going to right click and click offset as internal line, click reverse, and then change this dimension to 0.2. And now we'll kind of have like an edge stitch all the way around this this pocket that we're creating. Choose the internal line, the more inside one, this one. Right click and click cut. Delete the panel from underneath like we did before, and now we should just have one piece kind of in the right position on top. And just choose the free sewing tool, so the third sewing machine down, and just run your sewing machine around this, and then zoom in here and go to the internal line and run your sewing machine around this as well. So it can be a little bit tricky. Click here, stitch this all together, and now we've got another piece on top. Don't worry about the fact that we can see one on the other side as well. We'll take care of that later. The next thing we're going to do is add in these kind of partition seams. So if we click these two internal lines, right click and click cut and sew. I'm going to choose the self fabric. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to choose the color, and I'm going to set it to a grayer, darker tone. And I'm going to use this copied fabric now as just the contrast color for this design. So we have some contrast panels. And I think maybe even we set the pocket flaps to be the contrast color as well. Like this. So now we have the kind of constructed side seams put into this design as well. And for the sleeve, we can start to add in the gathering and the extension that we've got there. And we're going to do this in two ways. We're going to extend the pattern piece, and then we're going to add into some of the shrinkage value. So first of all, choose everything, go to the pattern select tool, the edit pattern tool, select all the bottom edges and the elbow points, and just drop this down maybe 2 centimeters. Then choose just the bottom edges and drop this down 2 centimeters as well. So our sleeve should be a lot longer now when we simulate this. And we can add in a little bit of further extension using the shrinkage value. So if we choose these two pattern pieces, we go down on the right side here to shrinkage warp and shrinkage weft. We want to go with the warp, so I'm going to put 125 into this percentage here and simulate again, and the sleeves have become longer still. I think that's too much, so I'm going to do 110. Yeah, that seems fine. And then if we look at this sleeve design here, we have gathering all in this kind of seam being created in the front, so we need to put a cut seam in the front, and then we keep the normal seam we've got in the back. So in the front, we're going to put a internal polygon or line from about this point here down to the cuff and just curve the line in a bit to follow the inside of the sleeve. And this point is now connecting to our construction seam in the jacket. So we're going to right click, click cut and sew. And with this underpiece and this piece for the front and the back, so this piece, this one, and this one, we're going to add our new self fabric. And now we kind of have the undersleeves being the same color as our partition seam and kind of this graphic effect happening under the jacket. Next steps is some elastic to gather this in. So choose these seams here and choose these back seams here. So all of these should be selected, go to elastic, and just leave this as the default value for now and we'll see what it looks like. So we shrink that in and it goes quite short indeed. So if we set this to maybe 90, it gives us a bit more space, okay? We can improve this a lot, again, by changing our fabric settings, our parameters, and our particle distance to improve the look of this. So if I choose all of these patterns and turn the particle distance to 8, for example, let's calculate this. Now we're at 8. If I simulate this again, our sleeves are looking a little bit more detailed in terms of the creasing. And then if I choose both of these self fabrics and I change my preset from wool to something a little bit softer, like a cotton stretch satin, for example, we might be able to get a nicer kind of wrinkle. I'll select both of them again and just experiment with some of these fabric settings. Nylon. To get a much nicer kind of crease happening in this fabric so it feels softer. Next thing we can do is I'm going to select the rib pieces, just the ribs and the cuffs and the neck trim. And I'm going to bring all these down into kind of their own space with the zippers as well. So the reason I'm doing this is so that I can just isolate like the primary and secondary elements. And by secondary, I mean these things are all single layered on top right now. And these things we want to create a lining for. So if I right click here and click layer clone underneath, and drop this all the way under in the bottom, I'm going to go to my library, go to fabric, scroll down. If I click this list view here, I'll see them by name. Scroll down to interlining, acetate lining, for example. Double click this and it will add it to your browser. Color, let's make a black lining. Done. Select all these pieces that have been put underneath. Apply the black fabric to them. And if I hide these pieces now, if I press Shift and Q, you'll see we've got a lining underneath this now. So again, Control A to select everything, Shift and Q to hide it, Shift and Q to bring it back. And if I simulate now, we should have a nicer look to this fabric, that it's got a lining underneath it. I think if I change this self preset from nylon back to cotton poplin, for example, we might get a more stable look. Yeah. So this is now looking quite detailed in terms of the drape and the fit. We've got a double layers of fabric, we've got pocket flaps, we next want to add zip details, buttons, the final little pieces to make this feel completely finished, and then we can look at how to export this in the end. So I'll see you guys in the next part.